Hey, this is Matt Stang, CEO of Delic Corp, and catch me on the Jesse T Show.
Matt Stang, welcome back to the Jesse T Show, brother.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Man, it's great connecting with you again. And we're working through some technical difficulties, and we're here, and we are present, and we are powerful. And, we talked a little bit before about, what you've done, what you're working on today. But there was a big point that I didn't cover. And I'm glad that we're doing this again, because I really want to get that insight. Tell the world a little bit how you, started off as an intern and became the owner at High Times, one of the biggest publications of its kind in that industry that's so powerful, been around for so many decades. How'd you become the owner of that company?
Sure. It's a fun story and one that starts in college, like most people's cannabis careers. I wrote my senior thesis in college about marijuana decriminalization in a time of terror. It was obviously just after 9/11, and I lived in New York, so it's a big part of my and my thesis was that if you took the economic rewards, the taxes, and you took away the economic costs, the police and jail, you'd have a giant pool of money that could convince the conservative folks that it was worth either legalizing or decriminalizing cannabis, right? This was 2002, 2001, 2002. I wrote this very long, very intricate paper because I believed in it strongly. And I was supposed to get quotes from primary sources. So I went out through a friend of a friend, knew the general counsel at High Times, the person who ran the legal department at High Times, and much more for 20 plus years at that point. And so I went out to him for a quote. He was away in Italy. Didn't actually get me the quote, but apparently read it, came back, said, "Hey, do you still need that?" I was like, "No, it's too late. I already submitted." He said, "Well, you know what? That was really interesting. You did a really good job. Do you want an internship? Are you interested in just coming in?" And I had literally graduated from college 5 days before that. And I was like, "I'm not opposed. I have a trip to Amsterdam." That was my graduation gift, was a trip to Amsterdam for 3 weeks.
Nice.
As one would do when it was the only place that was legal and enjoys cannabis. And so he said, "No problem. We actually need some help with taking back this event in Amsterdam called the Cannabis Cup. So you can help with that too." And
wow.
I started as essentially a collections person. So I was collecting old advertising debt and selling classified advertising.
Sexy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Whatever I could do to be a part of like the only legal job in cannabis, I will.
Yes.
And yeah, I went over to Amsterdam that summer, kind of interacted with all the folks in the legal cannabis industry over there, got them back on board to do the Cannabis Cup as a full event. It had kind of died off for a little while there because we had an outsourced party that blew it up. And really, just sold advertising, collected a bunch of bad debt, and spent a lot of time working on building the sales department of High Times. Wow. And worked my way up through there, became the director of that department called the marketing and sales arm of High Times. And in 2010, one of the owners was looking to sell his position. So I came in, bought his position, and then, kept being that driving force, brought the Cannabis Cup to America that year for the first time, increased it to, 14 events by 2015. a year, and turned it into a massive $20 million a year business.
Talk about the Cannabis Cup a little bit, because I don't know what it is. I've heard you talk about it a couple of times. It sounds profound and amazing and immersive. What is it?
Yeah, sure. So it is the original, call it, gathering event for cannabis. It is a place where people go to learn more, talk about it. Before there was segmentation and specialization in the cannabis market, it was the first general purpose cannabis event. What did it do? It took the best weed and kind of judged the best weed from around whichever space we're doing it, whether it's Amsterdam or California or any of these different areas, Colorado, Michigan, blah, blah, blah. And so we'd have a competition for the best cannabis, hash, nowadays vaporizers, edibles, tinctures, all these kind of things. And then we'd have a 2-day event with, at one point, 600, 700 booths on the ground.
Wow.
40, 50,000 people walking around, consuming cannabis. There's musical performances at night. So it's kind of a trade show party all rolled into one around celebration of the cannabis plant. And, it built out the real economic part of the cannabis market before it existed, right? When it was still underground and scared, we did large scale events where people would come together and cross-pollinate and network and build businesses and, all the things that help make an industry an industry.
It's a lot there, man. And, I won't get too into the weeds because I know we want to talk about some things you're working on today, but just in terms of, you obviously had the belief, that's the biggest thing. I've been in sales pretty much my whole life. And if I believe in something, it's the passion just kind of oozes out of me and I become an evangelist, right? Especially for plant medicines, which we'll get into, talking more towards psychedelic plant medicines. But for you coming out of college, and like you said, being a user of cannabis and wanting to be in this industry to some degree, obviously the passion and the belief was there, but how does that translate over in a process standpoint or in a functionality standpoint where you can go from intern to growing revenue lines of up to $20 million? What do you think it was about your zone of genius, your ability, relationship skills, operational skills, managerial skills? What is your superpowers that helped you do that, to go from intern to such a force within a company?
I think it's really just understanding where opportunities and people connect, right? It's understanding how to make things win-win for people and give people real value. Because if you're going to do this, you got to build it around real value. And I think that was a big part of what we delivered, was just a lot of value for companies that had no real outlets. And so it was a huge opportunity for companies that were kind of, criminalized, shit on, not allowed to put their stuff anywhere, to have a platform.
Yep.
And we created a platform to allow underrepresented businesses a chance to shine. And I think that was the key thing. And a lot of it was just us pushing, medical marijuana, healing plant medicine, kind of cannabis products in a way that amplified it out to the world. And you saw it was, we'd amplify it out. People would pick it up, they would get amplified further, and then now it's a talking point. Now marijuana is safer than alcohol, right? That's something we said 15 years ago, and now everyone says it. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes really apocryphal stories. It takes individuals experiencing. I think the most important thing that I can say about what we did at High Times and what we're doing at Delic is just trying to get it to scale, so more and more people experience it, and then more people evangelize it, and then less and less people want it to be stuck in a dark closet somewhere.
Yep, bringing light to it, bringing it to the forefront of conversation. Something that was taboo or demonized. It has such a healing factor to it. Such a profound. In both of our lives, both of our mothers individually have had profound experiences with cannabis at one level or another to battle or to ease some of the pains of their diseases. And I've seen it firsthand. And, in high school, I smoked it, sold it for a little while. And so it was one of those things where it was, it was knocking on the door of society to be let in, like showing the full force of what this quote unquote, medicine can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big part of this is, like you said, my mother went through 2 types of cancer, both of which cannabis was incredibly beneficial for. The first time for helping her get through and live, and the second time for helping with palliative care on her way out, right? And I think both of those things are really meaningful and real. And if you have to see your loved one, your architectural pillar of your life going through something like that, and you can't help them, which is what you don't have access to these cannabinoid products, a lot of people feel, it just makes absolutely no sense. So the more people see that that's possible, the more people think this is a ridiculous thing to have criminalized.
Yeah. It's like you said, the conversation's over. It's just a matter of when. Like when is everyone going to be fully online?
Yep, exactly. That's what we've come to. We've come to the point where it is going to happen. It's a question of when, and it's just all about a bunch of horse trading and ass covering from the people who have to move the laws.
Yeah, and who can make money, who can remain in power, who can capture market share, all these different things when it comes.
Just like the squabbles that happened in New Jersey to legalize weed, it was just it was done 2 years before it got actually done because there was a squabble about whether South Jersey was going to get extra licenses or not.
Yeah, right? Who's going to get paid, right? The cheddar.
Well, yes, people are still going to jail and people are still suffering, but can we argue about who's going to get the extra money, the extra 20% vig,
the kickbacks, the tax relief, the incentives, all the gooey lobbyist bullshit?
That's what we're fighting about right now.
Of course, it's always going to be the fight. It's always the fight.
Level, there's a lot of money swinging from a lot of different angles, so it'll take some time.
Yeah, I've heard recently somewhere in the 30 billion mark for the psychedelic space coming up, and you probably could speak much better to this, but like I've read somewhere it's like 32 or 36 billion emerging market for psychedelics in terms of therapies and ongoing assistance for people. Yeah.
So there's a $500 billion spent on just pharmaceuticals in this country. There's like $250 billion on depression, anxiety, and related treatments every year.
Incredible.
$250 billion. So it's like the market's pretty huge.
Yeah.
The market's pretty fucking huge. Like you just drill down on that. Like just the anti-anxiety stuff is like almost $20 billion a year.
Goodness.
There's a lot of room. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot. There's literally, $250 billion or so every single year in this country being spent on mental health conditions that have at least some development or developing drug from the psychedelic sense that can help with, right? So it's like, is it DMT? Is it 5-MeO? Is it rhodiola? Is it LSD? All of these things are in process and they all help slightly differently. And most of the stuff that's treating these mental health illnesses do very little to nothing, or stop working, or create other issues,
yes.
Like feeling like you're in a fog, or not having a sexual desire, or not being able to eat, or there's so many side effects of this daily regimen of pills that if we can offer something that's even comparable or even a little less effective, but has none of those side effects, people would jump over the moon to get those things.
No question. What do you think? There's a couple questions that came up for me in this point of this conversation. I'll jump to the first one. The palliative care, the end of life. There's a lot of people that have had experience with psychedelics to come to terms with their own mortality and to have some sort of better okay with accepting that they're going to leave this plane of existence. What has been your thoughts around either utilizing psychedelics specifically in palliative care for certain situations? And what are your thoughts about it personally for you? I mean, I could just say it's something that I've thought about, on my way out, if I have the opportunity and it makes sense, maybe have one last trip before the big trip, and hopefully that's going to be something that eases the transition. But what are your thoughts around that?
My thoughts are go out like Aldous Huxley. The only way to do it. It's the man went out with a blaze of psychedelic glory, and his last recorded thing was a smile. And he was very, very happy. I think my answer there is that you have really, really strong science coming out of NYU around cancer and psilocybin. So the interminable fear of death that comes with cancer, and psilocybin actually curing it, right? So it's probably one of the best pieces of science that I've seen, and it works.
Yeah.
So we know now, these are people who are not necessarily going to die, but because they have some form of late stage or advanced cancer, they know there is a very good chance they will die. And so they have this cancer anxiety that is overwhelming and all consuming. So, when I look at that really interesting data from the studies around, cancer, anxiety, and mortality, it's really spectacular how much it helps people, and how the reported feelings of ease and grace when it comes to looking down the barrel of one's own mortality.
Yep.
I think that's, it's the most central thing to human existence of anything, because really, what is all religion but an explanation for death?
Yeah.
Right? What are
some peace of mind for the afterlife,
what are all of our people squabbling about and fighting about and arguing about? It's like, what's going to happen after I'm gone? What is a statue or a monument or anything else? It's just a way to make you feel like you've somehow outlived death. And
remained. Yeah.
You're not back to stardust. You're still here. You're still something. Why do people have children and grandchildren and legacies? All of those things come from this great overarching, thing that oversits everything. And
Yeah.
having that psychedelic profound experience that allows you to feel connected to everything and source, and have a feeling like you're not alone, but also when you go, you're still here in some manner, means, or sense, is really profound. And so that's to me a huge part of what psychedelics can do to help people, because a lot of people's neuroses specifically, and OCDs, other things like that, have to do with fear of death, right?
Yes.
You're being super controlling because you're scared you're gonna disappear from this earth, and you can't really articulate it or even feel it because it's too scary. So you just wind up putting these pattern behaviors around neuroses. So I think there's a lot of stuff that it can help treat, that psychedelic therapies can help treat with this. And so I think it's an important part of the future conversation of psychedelic wellness and psychedelic medicine.
I've heard some psychonauts and some philosophers kind of attribute it to, and even thinking about Ram Dass talking about, when you leave this plane of existence and you move on to the next, it's like taking off an uncomfortable shoe, like a shoe that was too tight. Finally getting to have that relief and expand and step into your fullness instead of being stuck in this really tight situation, so to speak. But, just touching to your point about the fear of death, and I still grapple with it, even though I work with psychedelics. It's still something that I'm not ready for. Right. And maybe one day I'll accept that there's something beyond, and I'll be ready and all these things. But I'll tell you, I sat with a few different plant medicines last year in Peru, and I was out there for 10 days, and I was in the Sacred Valley in Cusco. And this day I was specifically working with San Pedro, and San Pedro taught me many things. And what it taught me on one of the days was, I have a daughter that passed away years ago. Thankfully, I have 2 sons that are here on earth, but we had a couple losses before we had our children. And I always wanted to reunite with my daughter that I held until she passed away. She was 7 days old. She came out injured at delivery, and she was on life support. And they gave us the ultimatum saying she could be on life support forever, or you could take her off the machines and let her go. And we did. We took her off the machines. She passed away in my arms. And ever since then, I had this burning desire to connect with her, spend time with her, because I had 7 days. So fast forward through the San Pedro journey, I sat with my daughter for 2 hours. I sat with her energy and her soul and her spirit, whatever it was, her frequency, whatever. And then I sat with my mom and my dad, who have passed over the years. And what that journey taught me was that, beyond my own death, but just the passing of other people that meant so much to me, they never truly leave you. There's an energetic imprint. There's something about their vibration that they're in your heart. And for me, I just walked away from that day with the biggest smile on my face, knowing that, like, people, when they pass away, somehow they're still with you.
I mean, that's absolutely beautiful. And, I feel like there is a clear sense especially when utilizing these, you know, mental health technologies around psychedelics. You can really find connection to that feeling in a way that is, you know, mystical, right? The early work around psychedelics really used the word mystical a lot because it was really hard to use any scientific words. I think we've done a lot since then to really identify what the science is behind the mysticism.
Yes.
But at the same time, even if I know how it works, it still feels like a magic trick.
No question. It totally is. It's divine technology. That's what I attribute it to. I think it's given to us from God's source, creator, whatever you want to call it. And it's something that maps over to our brain so perfectly in so many ways. And we even have endogenous DMT that gets released from the pineal gland. There's so many beautiful things. And correct me if I'm wrong there, but this is what I've heard and learned along the way. If you know anything different or subset.
You're right. DMT is what is released in your brain when you die.
Yeah.
So that's actually why 5-MeO tracks very well with near-death experiences.
Yeah, that's and people that survive, they come back and they, you know, they've seen the light, they have this God experience, and they feel, you know, enlightened or something, and they basically had a psychedelic journey.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That is your brain's actual internal reserve of DMT releasing because it thinks you're dying, and then you don't actually die. Someone saved you, someone breathes for you, something happens, but there are, you know, thousands of reports of people having experiences that are remarkably similar to a 5-MeO DMT experience.
What a perfectly designed system we are as humans. If you were to think about it in that cold, harsh technological way, like there's a built-in fail-safe to when you know that the worst time of your life is going to be so scary. Something just comes that really you can only tap into through, you know, meditation or maybe yoga or, you know, plant medicines or breath work. Something comes to you to help ease that passage. That's incredible?
It's really incredible. It's one of the more amazing things ever that, you know, that we've learned that we can replicate it and that we have the power to do that. Right. So it's just, that to me is just so amazing, and why I think there's so much, you know, so many breakthroughs coming from this. I think you have a bunch of technology. Each thing helps different people with different things, but collectively the broad spectrum of psychedelic therapies, call it somewhere between 20 and 60 compounds that I know of that have healing properties out there right now.
Wow.
That's going to be amazing, right? 7-10 years from now, when those are all online and you can go to a clinic and just, you know, request the thing for this specific anxiety or this kind of depression, you're like, okay, we'll try this. If this works, great. And if not, you'll come back in a couple of weeks and try a different one.
What a beautiful world. I hope to be around to be able to see it, or at least, you know, like you said, legacy, my kids will be able to enjoy that world, and it'll hopefully be a different time. And, you know, I want to jump into Delic, but real quick, one last question. We were talking about, you know, this idea of the market capture, market share, you know, what's going on in that side of things. And in my mind went to thinking about big pharma, and we talked about that a little bit, and their whole play and their whole, you know, so many things you can say about big pharma in this space. And really what they do is they're drug dealers. They sell pills, and a lot of times their pills are to mask a deeper problem. They don't heal anything. And a lot of times you need a pill for a pill for a pill for a pill. Like you said, some pills will cause lack of libido. So now you got to go out and get some sort of, you know, mood enhancer, some sort of a blue pill or whatever it is. And then you need something for that and something for that. And so now they're just keeping you on this forever hamster wheel of pills, pills, pills. What do you think? What do you envision seeing, hopefully, when these healing modalities 20, 30, 40 years down the road have, you know, whatever it is, and we have 20 to 60 options, like you mentioned, in that ballpark, actually start healing people? What's going to happen? Do you think somehow big pharma is probably going to find a way to ride the gravy train, or do you think that they can be the little man can, so to speak, take down Goliath? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, when you look at big pharma, what they really are banks with lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So they're not anything other than shareholder capital generating machines. So I think they look at the people who have developed the patents for these new grade of substances, and they buy them.
Yep.
5 times what they're worth, and then charge more. And that's the reality of it, right? It's just, but
too big to fail.
Yeah. Well, when you have each of those companies being worth, 70, 80, $100 billion and having billions of dollars to just play with, and stock market capital worth 20 times that. There's no, they could, of course they could fail. They could market OxyContin and wind up having to pay gigantic fucking, but they're doing that anyway.
Biggest crimes in history if you look it up.
It's just, to me, you look at where I think it'll go. I think there will be ownership from large pharmaceutical companies that own patents around drugs developed for psychedelic therapy, and I think there will be people who actually get cured of their issue for maybe not their whole life, because a new trauma might happen and they might need to work it out, because life is at its core still pretty traumatic. You still go through a lot of shit. From the best life to the worst life, people still go through tons of shit every day, every week, every month. But my feeling is, if you look at what can be done with psychedelics, you can actually show a curative rate of 60, 65% of people who are better 12, 24 months after a treatment or series of treatments. So, I think that is different. That actually gets people clear and off the medication so they can be their authentic, true selves and not have to just adjust around 3 different, 4 different, 7 different things.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's powerful, man. And it's a hope for the future. And even at the spectrum of people being healed, right? Regardless of what goes on with these big corporations, big entities, big pharma, whatever it is, the machine will still probably keep rolling, but we'll have some healed people too. And some people will become more powerful.
I'm hopeful about the fact that, look, as long as there's an economic case for them selling it, they'll buy it, they'll make money, because they can take that and, put it out on the market. And since they're getting 8 times their revenue, 10 times their revenue, 20 times their revenue for their stock price, and they can buy it for 6 times from a company that's making 1 time, that company will sell it, they'll buy it, and they'll make sure that it goes to more places, which I can't be mad if they invest a bunch of money in marketing to get more people to try. When you see the soft, slow commercial with, don't forget the psilocybin. And it's on after your football on,
right.
and it's got soft tones and a slightly older man talking about how he's finally feeling well. Thank you, psilocybin.
Right.
I'm not that opposed to it. It's not, you have to have the people who are on this side pushing over to get it there. And that's what we want to do. And then there's going to be unless we're changing what capitalist system we live in, there will be some form of consolidation, and there will be folks who have large banks that need to buy younger companies because it determines their compensation as a director or officer of one of these large publicly traded companies.
Let's talk about it then. So let's talk about your transition and hanging up the hat and the tools over, at High Times, what that was like, and then getting, called of service to be able to create Delic. What was it like leaving High Times, and then what was the transition and the inception like for Delic?
Sure. So 2016, we put High Times up for sale. We had a buyer in early 2017, sold the company to a private equity group, moved it to California, really focused on, the newly legal states and really pushing the message and the brand, and helped them run it for 2 years or so. And then, as happens when you sell a company, there's a certain amount of diminishing returns once you're no longer the person pushing all the buttons, you're just a person helping execute. And so had a wonderful experience at Burning Man. We were just talking about it.
Hell yeah.
And, spent 8 days in the desert with my wife and a bunch of friends, and saw the incredible, really, the way that psychedelic culture was going mainstream. The fact that there were, bankers, lawyers, the biggest celebrities, everyone there at 3 a.m, clearly on some form of psychedelic substance, having the best and being
Oh yeah.
removed from their from the commodification of the normal everyday world, because it is a place that removes commodification in a very real way.
Yep.
And just, having spent time before that really looking at psychedelics and going through the kind of guided psychedelic work, we saw like this is a moment. There's a moment in time where the rest of the world hasn't caught up to what's happened. So we decided it's time to really use our talents for something good, and that's to push the mainstreaming of psychedelics and psychedelic wellness. And so we created Delic, call it a month later, and my wife and I, put it together. And really, at that point, there was no such thing as a psychedelic corporation. So it was kind of we got a couple of "Are you guys on drugs?" kind of comments. Right. What we said was, look, there's a tipping point. We lived the tipping point in cannabis. I can call it, now that I've seen one, I can call it for psychedelics, and we're going to be part of pushing that over the edge in the next couple of years. I think now you can look back and see that did happen. There has been a real push, and obviously tons of cities and even states have decriminalized. One is even legalized. There's been a whole raft of things that have changed in that 3.5-year period.
Yep.
And I think that's just part of it, pushing this forward. And so with Delic, we really focused on how can we do good scalably. And so for us, it was really the thing that came front and center was ketamine therapy. My wife has an anxiety disorder and found ketamine therapy, and it was incredibly transformative for her. So we took the company public a little over a year ago, used that public capital to buy a couple of companies, become the largest chain of ketamine clinics in America, and really focus on scaling that out. We also have a lab in Canada that does psychedelic and cannabis research with licenses from Health Canada. So that's pretty fantastic, being able to have a bunch of PhDs doing work in a licensed lab at University of British Columbia. And, we started the first psychedelic wellness event, and it turned into the largest psychedelic event in America. We had 2,500 people last year in Las Vegas. So,
talk about that a little bit, because I know that was part of one of your expertises with the cannabis cups and reviving that, bringing that back from the brink and turning that into a movement, essentially. Talk about the psychedelic version of that. Like what occurred, what happened in Vegas, and what does the future look like?
Sure. So what happened in Vegas, we had an incredible event. Timing was great because we were between variants. We did it in the early November. And
beautiful.
At a place called Area 15, which is the world's first Burning Man mall. It's insane. It's basically the people spent a couple $100 million building this place ground up.
Wow.
There's a 50,000 square foot Meow Wolf exhibition.
Heck yeah.
Immersive psychedelic art installation.
Alex Gray stuff is over there, correct?
It is. I actually, strangely enough, ran into Alex. He's an old friend. Alex created the Cannabis Cup. He did the update of my Cannabis Cup for me and built this whole beautiful thing.
Beautiful. I have Alex Gray ink on my arm.
Yes, I had him judge the Cannabis Cup many years ago. I had him judge it twice, and Allison as well. And so, yes, they are featured prominently in Meow Wolf. They have a great little exhibit, like a little area inside the Factory of Doom.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the space is this amazing, immersive, psychedelic, really compelling space. And so we took over one of the spaces is a motion mapped room. So the entire space is 360 immersive video on all the walls. So
wow.
You feel like you're inside of whatever you're presenting or showing. And so we had these incredible speakers come, and they gave their keynote kind of speeches with the entire room mapped to what they're talking about. So they're talking about how epigenetics and DNA changes with psychedelics, and there would actually be DNA melting on the walls. Like, seen before. I can't even, it's almost indescribable because it doesn't seem like it could be real, but it was. And then we had about 45 sponsors with different kind of call it, everything from clinical help to mycology to information to immersive technology that can help you with your journey, across the spectrum. And then we had a series of panels and large scale kind of public get-togethers on the outside stage, and then we had a concert at night.
Beautiful.
Great event, and drew 2,500 people and was just packed out. We had a line for 3 hours in the morning. It was a really good feeling. It was a great feeling, and the people who were there, I had people come up to me. This one woman, she brought her son, who was like 19, and she said, "Thank you so much for doing this. I've spent, he's had clinical depression since he was 15, and I couldn't figure anything out, and nothing worked. None of the drugs worked. And then we found DMT. We found 5-MeO-DMT, changed his life, and we just couldn't find anywhere to hear people talk about it. And you have 2 different panels about it, and I just saw the first one, and it was life-changing. I talked to the doctor, and we registered for a clinical trial so we can show how great this is to help belong to more people." And it's like she was crying.
Yeah,
and it was really, it was people like that over and over again. I probably had 20 or 30 come up to me and just tell me how they've been. Another guy told me, "I've been looking for an event like this for 25 years. He's like 50. He's like, I've just, it's been so central and core to my life, and I've never found a place to really be with other people and talk about it and connect on it." And
so beautiful.
Yeah, it's about an industry coming out of the shadows and into the light, right? Because to us, there is a legal psychedelics sphere that is building, and so bringing those people together in a meaningful way for the next couple of years is really important for building that infrastructure and that ecosystem, right? Because that's how things get done. It's that kind of event where a guy with this idea and a girl with that idea and a guy with this capital all are standing together, and they're like, "Well, what if we did this? Whoa, that would be amazing," right? That is the incredible value of the capitalist American system, right? So bringing people together for that kind of impromptu meeting and ability to talk about what they're doing, it creates whole new things.
Yep.
And it builds the industry. So that's what happened with the Cannabis Cup. People would come together and create new, like the first vaporizer pen got created at one of our Cannabis Cups. The first CBD product was entered into our Cannabis Cup. Seeing that go out, win the award, and then become something that's now worldwide and everywhere, right? That's 14 years ago now. It takes time, but I feel like that is the opportunity that we can really help change the world a bit.
Almost becomes like an incubator in a sense, a little startup community of people that are evangelists for this experience, whether they themselves individually or someone next to them, like this woman's son, have been profoundly impacted by these beautiful, beautiful medicines. You get people that believe in it and that can speak to it. And then all of a sudden you get the funding behind it. And now we have new sectors, new businesses, new relationships. We're healing the world. We're changing the world.
That's, to me, the biggest outcome that I like to see is just, getting, and the more people doing it, the better chance of something great happening.
It's beautiful, brother. What was the name of the event?
Meet Delic, MEET Delic.
Beautiful. And do you plan on doing another something similar to that event this year?
Yeah, it's already on the calendar for November 4th and 5th, 2022.
Beautiful. Where can people find tickets, or where I want to go?
Meetdelic.com. MEETDELIC.com.
Meetdelic.com. Got it. Okay. And then as far as Delic today, right? Because you talked about the inception, you talked about the the importance between how your wife's, life has been changed and how your life has been changed. And you've seen things with your mother, and, there's so many things that you've experienced personally that how could you not be, a pioneer in this space? So that being said, where are you looking to go to with this, with Delic? What is Delic going to allow you to do in terms of changing the world and spreading the word?
Sure. Scale, right? Once again, being the largest clinic chain in America today and growing that exponentially over the next couple of years. We think that's the real opportunity, is to be in the top 50 or top 100 markets with a clinic where you can get safe, effective, and really just beneficial care, right? We want people to feel like there is a solution in their backyard. They feel like anxious, depressed, shitty, just awful, unable to get out of bed, can't go to work, or so PTSD that they're gonna freak out and break something or scream, or all of these things that have very little help from the current crop of pharmaceuticals. And I think that's the reality, is that you're getting 5%, 8% efficacy for these kind of things from pharmaceutical drugs. And we want to show 60, 70, 80% efficacy. And I think that's the opportunity, is to build this thing to a scale where, if you think about it, you'll see one of our clinics somewhere within 30 minutes of you, and you can go get the treatment, schedule it through our hotline, make it easy. And that today means ketamine, but tomorrow and the next day it means psilocybin and MDMA. So since those are the two that are in for FDA approval right now, I think beyond that, there's many more, as we talked about. So I think it's just building the infrastructure for psychedelic healing, and then as new molecules come on, we can just do better, right? The more tools in our toolbox, the better chance we'll be able to put that screw in the right way, right? The more we're able to really look at you and say, okay, holistically, this is the thing that's most likely to help with that. But if it doesn't help, we can always try another thing in 3 weeks. You come back and we'll try something else and get you to a place of healing. Because I think that's really what it comes down to me, is each person is so individual and different, and having a larger number of things to try, and they're all so powerful and beneficial in their own ways. I think it's really going to be it's going to change how people interact with mental health. It's going to change how people talk about it. To me, it's really, we can destigmatize mental health, because if you right now say, I'm clinically depressed, well, then guess what? You're always clinically depressed. And it's basically, you're putting a black mark on yourself. And now no one will really want you to do the thing at the job or the thing at the place, because they're like, oh, that guy's depressed. Now, if you can say, I was clinically depressed, and then I did a course of 3 psilocybin treatments, and I haven't been clinically depressed for 2 years, it's a totally different thing. You can talk about mental health as if it is something that will be cured, right? Because you're talking about curative properties with psychedelic medicines. So that, I think, just helps the conversation, because now people can talk about it and not feel like they're outing themselves and making it that they can't get a job or get a loved one because people think, oh, well, that person's broken.
It's a beautiful vision, brother. It's powerful, and it's happening in real time. And, I had a journey with mushrooms a while back, and it told me, the download was to use my microphone to speak truth and teach freedom. And it was not necessarily just this microphone, but it was conversations like this. It was speaking with people one-on-one. It was, knowing when and where to have the conversation about my journeys and how that may be able to help someone. And you're doing this at scale, and this is just a beautiful thing. So I just want to say thank you, brother.
Well, thank you for doing it, and thank you for amplifying it. I think that's right on. Everyone should use whatever means and method they have to help push this forward. To me, it's just, there's no more important thing than helping people deal with trauma, because traumatized people traumatize people.
Yeah. Hurt people. Yeah.
People hurt people. And that's what the only way you deal with hurt that I've seen meaningfully is through something like this. Most people internalize it and then push it down and suppress it, and then it comes out in these really fucking weird and kind of awful ways.
Yeah.
The unexamined life, it's hard. So, I think if we can actually, like, if we could get Vladimir Putin to do a couple of sessions of MDMA therapy, or Xi Jinping to do a journey or two, maybe they'd stop having to control everything because of whatever trauma happened when they were younger. But, who knows? My favorite thing was Rick Doblin, the founder of MAPS, used to send MDMA to folks in the Middle East to try to get them to take MDMA and stop fighting about Israel. I mean, while I don't think that succeeded, because most people are like, go fuck yourself, and nor do I believe Vladimir Putin would ever do anything of the sort, I do think we can help a person who might go on to be that traumatizer or hurter of people if we do this and give interventional therapy sooner and have these options where people can clearly see you can get better and not just suppress the issue, but actually resolve the issue. Then you're going to have people doing that, and then they will be less likely to hurt other people. I think that's the greatest thing that I could do on this planet.
It's a beautiful vision, brother, and we're underway. The Renaissance has begun. So to kind of cap it off, you mentioned helping people. That's the end. The end goal is helping people one way or another. Someone who is listening to this, someone who's watching this, is curious. Someone who wants to learn more about it. Someone who wants to learn more about Delic, more about you, more about psychedelics in general. Maybe they're called to it. Maybe they're curious because it's something that is beneficial for them or someone that they love close to them. Where do they start? Where do they go?
Okay, well, we have a bunch of properties, so we can certainly help. If you want to learn more about Delic, you can go to deliccorp.com. It has all of our other properties on there, so that would be an easy place to jump off of. Reality Sandwich, our online magazine, has a couple thousand articles about different things around psychedelics. Meet Delic has the event, and we're also shortly publishing about 30 hours of high quality video content from all of the speakers. So you'll be able to see, Aubrey Marcus and Dustin, and just a who's who of psychedelic thinkers and folks around this space. I think, if you want to try a psychedelic that's legal now, you can go to KWC, Ketamine Wellness Centers. That's our chain of clinics. And there's one, in 10 states. So, there's about a 20% chance you live in one of those states if you're listening from America. And yeah, I think there's so much going on. Sign up for our newsletter. We send stuff every week. I think we're trying to educate and empower people, and we believe that if you have someone who needs help dealing with their trauma and their pain, there are answers and there are methods that don't just include taking what the first doctor tells you to take.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for being you. He's the amazing, mighty, and powerful Matt Stang. I'm Jesse T. Catch us on next week's episode.